Hey folks, my name is Matthew Smith. I play guitar. I've been teaching guitar for about 30 years now. And one of the things I constantly run into, and I definitely ran into when I was coming up, are bar chords and the difficulty of bar chords and why are bar chords so hard. And I never learned bar chords, and this guy doesn't even use bar chords, and there's a way around bar chords. There's just all this lore about bar chords. And they are harder to play than the first chords most people learn. We call them the open chords. So if this is you, if you're getting ready to learn bar chords or in the middle of trying to learn bar chords, I just wanted to give some advice and some experience from my point of view and some encouragement, because anybody can learn bar chords. Yes, they're hard, but don't give up. You can play bar chords. I had gotten in my head I could never do bar chords because when I first saw them, I just couldn't even get any of the strings to ring out. And I did my best to arrange my fingers like the diagram showed me and squoze my best and got nothing. And it hurt too, probably. So I got it in my head early on, I can't play bar chords with guitar or guitar. And then at my first lesson, my teacher, I'd already been playing about 8 or 9 months, so he was kind of interviewing me, and he's like, well, can you play bar chords? And I said, oh, no, I can't play bar chords. And he was like, oh, no, that's silly. You can play bar chords. And so he was the first person who came along in my guitar playing and kind of just was like, no, you can do that. Don't be a wimp, basically. So I started practicing them, and within I think about 2 weeks, I could basically sling the chords to All Along the Watchtower, I think is what it was. Which, if you watch someone do, you can see what looks so easy about it. The shapes almost look the same. You know, you're basically holding this configuration and moving it, making almost no or very little changes to it as you do. It doesn't even look as difficult as some of the chord exchanges you've already had to learn, like G switching to C, or jumping into D minor, or getting that F to ring out. All that stuff's really hard too. So you just have to get over this first initial sort of technique and coordination issue with bar chords. The reason why bar chords are hard is because your fingers tend to want to work what's called in sympathy with each other, meaning they move in a similar direction at the same time or following each other. This is called sympathetic motion, and it's what the tendons and the musculature of our fingers are most prone to do and do the most naturally and the easiest. And so chords that feature finger arrangements like this, tend to be easy to learn. When they start to cross and get in front of each other and you swing your pinky around, those are the chords that are a little harder to learn. And so bar chords have that. Bar chords require that you have one finger barring, which is a very, very particular, it has to be completely straight from the base knuckle up through the joints to the tip of the finger. So the first problem I see people have when they start trying to do bar chords is with their bar itself. They're either holding the guitar incorrectly and they've got this bending in the middle joint, or maybe they're coming out enough but their finger is bent and curved and not even parallel with the fret. You want it to be completely flat, completely straight, like a bar, like the word sounds, again, from this base knuckle joint all the way up through the knuckles and joints to the tip of the finger. You also want the finger to present parallel to the fret. You don't want it to be diagonal. You want it to be parallel. And like I've mentioned in my other videos, you want to be as close to the fret as possible. If you allow space and distance, you are just multiplying how much force you have to apply to get that string to sound clear, and that makes it a lot harder. Also, the truth about barring is you don't really use the bottom of your finger. You use the left side. If I'm pointing at my face and looking at my finger like this, it's the left side of it that rolls against the strings, where that knuckle and that bonier part of your finger is closer to the skin and your finger is literally harder on its side. That's the part of your finger you're going to apply down onto the strings, rolling, even using a little bit of the side of your knuckle. So this is hard. Never mind arranging your other fingers into these chord shapes yet. So I recommend just getting used to the barring part of this. And Doing your dotted frets is a great idea. It's going to be harder to bar the strings the closer to the first fret you get because the string is really tight down there and you have to press really hard. But coming up to the third fret, it starts to get a little easier. And then come up to the fifth fret, just relax your hand, let it breathe, take your thumb off the guitar. And then when you get to the next fret, you're going to bar on, just extend and lay that flattened finger across, roll it onto its side a little bit, swing your elbow in towards your side, and shift your thumb down to the bottom of the back of the neck, kind of pushing up into it from behind. And just, if you can get any strings to ring out, that's a victory. You don't have to get them all to ring out. Come up to the next dotted fret. This is fret 7. Again, just relax your finger, take your thumb off the back and let it breathe, and reapply pressure at this last dotted fret here, 9. And then just shake it out. Maybe do that again. That's a really good way to just get the muscles in the left side of your hand used to this barring that you're going to be doing with the thumb and the index finger. I don't know how long it's going to take for that to be comfortable, or how long you should just do that before you try the next thing. But the next thing is to actually try some bar chords. And there are 4 famous bar chords that most guitar players learn first and use the most. And these 4 chord shapes are not new chords. These are just chords you already know moved up. So the first 2 bar chords are your type 1, some people still call it E-shape bar chords, or root on 6th string shape bar chords. They can be referred to a lot of ways, but I like saying E-shape. That definitely lets me know what the bar chord's going to be, because I'm taking my E major chord shape and including the open strings, I'm moving every note, every string up 1 fret. And so I'm barring to do the job of the nut. It's almost like a capo, if you know what that is. And then now with my next finger from each one I had previously used, I'm making each note of the chord. Again, first fret's the hardest place to try it. So when you first try these chords, I recommend the middle of the guitar, maybe fret 5 or 7. And you'll have a little bit of an easier time, I think, reaching and getting to everything. But y'all, this is hard. I definitely remember taking my right hand and having to manage the placement of some of these fingers. The first thing you'll notice when you try to make this E-shaped bar chord, and this is true for everyone, there's a tendency for your third finger, your ring finger, to get pulled to the left. When you first start making these bar chords, it's a really strong tendency. As you develop like independence and coordination in each finger and some muscle memory with this gets easier. But if you don't pay attention to this particular thing, it never goes away and you have to fix it. And this third finger pulling to the left too far, it can get so bad that you actually hear a wrong note coming out of that string, or no note coming out of it. So I advocate learning to do this thing I call stacking. And I remember having to think of it this way to learn it myself. And what I mean is, you're going to stack the third finger on top of your pinky's fingernail. You're going to make that pinky really straight and perpendicular, and literally pinch or squeeze or stack your third finger up next to it, making almost like one finger with those 2 fingers. And notice I can get right up to the frets. There's practically no space. I'm not like this. I've got that third finger stacked against my pinky. And I've found that if you just don't at some point focus on the stacking, it ain't going to happen naturally. It's like an extra thing you have to pay attention to. And then here's your second finger on the G string doing the note your first finger had done when you played this chord open. So there's your E-shaped bar chord. More on this somewhere else, but the name of the chord is determined by the name of the bass note or the root note. It was called E here as we played off the open E. If you move it up 1 fret, you can call it F, because the name of this note is F. Then it would be an F sharp or a G flat right here, and then the chord's name changes to G as you move and play it off the note G. So this is why a bar chord player will learn the names of the notes on this string: E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, and the sharps and flats are in between. And that's how you know the name of the chord or can find the chords. That's your major chord. You can make all the major chords with that E shape: G major, G sharp major, or A flat major, A major, A sharp major, or B flat major, and so on. If you need a minor chord, just take this finger off. Makes the chord a little harder because it's actually harder to get that string to ring out from the bar than it is from the tip of that second finger pressing it. So you got to make sure your pinky's really arched. A lot of players have trouble getting this G string to ring out on their minor chord, which is the most important note of that chord to get it to sound like a minor. So you really want that string to ring out. You have to make sure your pinky's really arched, and you have to make sure your bar is rolled onto that hard knuckly side of it. That's going to get pressure on just that string. of course, that chord shape is from your E minor chord. So that's just your chord E minor you already know moved up. And there you can make all the minor chords with F minor, G minor, A minor, B minor, C minor. They're great. And then you have two other famous, commonly used bar chords, and they're your A-shaped bar chords. You have the chord A major, or it can be played with 1, 2, 3, or it can be played with a little half bar. And that shape moves up and makes this bar chord. I've seen people play that like this. I've seen Jerry Garcia uses his pinky, used his pinky there. But it's famously difficult to make this chord. I think of the four, this is by far the hardest. It's just hard to get your fingers to do two bars at the same time. Your first finger bar, that's what's covering your open fifth string and your open first string as you move those notes up. And then these three notes you were pressing with the fingers, they're all now going to be pressed by the third finger. But notice how I'm having to get reverse flexion in this joint to not only deliver enough pressure down onto those strings, but also maybe get this first string to ring out from here. That finger would have to bend enough for that to happen. I will say, most of the time when people play this chord, this string gets left out. And so if your finger doesn't bend back enough, if you don't get enough reverse flexion to clear that first string, it's okay if it's muted. You already have that note present on the D string, that's why. But sometimes you might want to get it to ring out. And if you keep pushing and practicing, you'll get more flexion out of that joint the more you play guitar. I know my finger did not bend back that much when I first started playing guitar, and now it does. So there's that. On wider neck guitars or classical guitars, players will play that like that. But that's your A chord shape major, just moved up. So this would be called A sharp major or B flat major. That's a famous chord. Here's B major, famous B chord. And then you can make C, C sharp, D, E flat, or D sharp, E. You can make all the different major chords with this. Famous chord used in a lot of songs. And then the last one, this is probably your easier one to learn, is your A minor chord shape moved up. And it makes the most common bar chord of all, B minor, famously here on fret 2. Makes sense. If this is an A and you move everything up a whole step, now it's a B minor. So the minor and major is the shape, and then the flat and the sharp and the note is the fret you're playing on. This would be a B minor because the name of this note right here is B. It goes A open, A sharp, B. This is why guitar players learn the names of the notes on the fifth string as well as the sixth string so that they know how to name the famous chords. B minor, for instance, or C sharp minor, or E major. So you learn A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then at the 12th fret, you get back to the note you started on. We'll probably make a little video about that, just how to name the bar chords. But anyway, that's most of my first lesson on bar chords and most of my initial advice. Most players, I just suggest taking a week of your practicing where you spend a few minutes, 3 or 4 minutes each day, just trying to make each of those four shapes, your E minor shape, and then the ones that bar off the A string, your A and your A minor shape. And I mean, you could Google those and just look them up and try them on different frets and relax your hand and just give your hand time to adjust it to the remarkable amount of like dexterity and coordination you have to develop as these fingers don't act sympathetically and they instead, transverse from each other and move in different directions. It's just famously a harder type of thing to do with your hand. But don't give up, because you can learn them. If I did, I know you can. Keep playing.